In 1991, the world was introduced to the emotional story of Naria, a Kuwaiti girl who testified about the atrocities committed by Iraqi forces in Kuwait.
While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying.
What the world was never told was that the incident had in fact been the work of a public relations firm, Hill & Knowlton, and the girl had actually been the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador. The public was whipped into a frenzy of hatred for the Hussein regime, not for the documented atrocities that it had actually committed on segments of its own population, with weapons supplied to them by the United States itself, but on the basis of an imaginary story told to the public via their televisions, orchestrated by a PR firm.
Nurse Naira became the mainstream's darling, but once the vote had safely passed, she admitted inventing the whole thing and was actually the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington, lying to get the public to back war.
The BBC showed a cropped image of a rally in Iran, which they claimed was a crowd of protesters who assembled to show their opposition to the Iranian government. An uncropped version of the same photograph displayed on the LA Times website, however, revealed that the photo in fact came from a rally in support of Ahmadinejad. In August of 2011, the BBC ran footage of what they claimed was a celebration in Tripoli's Green Square. When sharp-eyed viewers noticed that the flags in the footage were in fact Indian flags, the BBC was forced to admit that they had accidentally broadcast footage from India instead of Tripoli. Also that month, CNN reported on a story from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, claiming that 8 infants in incubators had died in a hospital in Hama, where Syrian authorities cut off power in the area. Some news sites even carried pictures of the infants. The images were later admitted to have been taken in Egypt, and no evidence has ever emerged to back up the accusations. In 2005, the Bush White House admitted to producing videos that were designed to look like news reports from legitimate independent journalists, and then feeding those reports to media outlets as prepackaged material ready to air on the evening news.
To promote your agenda, you cited the need for ethical concerns and the need for a bright line between the press and the government. Your administration continues to make the use of video news releases, which are prepackaged news stories sent to television stations, fully aware that some or many of these stations will air them without any disclaimer that they are produced by the government. Comptroller General of the United States this week said that raises ethical questions. Does it raise ethical questions about the use of government money to produce stories about the government that wind up being aired with no disclosure that they were produced by the government?
When the Government Accountability Office ruled that these fake news reports in fact constituted illegal covert propaganda, the White House simply issued a memo declaring the practice to be legal. In April 2008, the New York Times revealed a secret U.S. Department of Defense program that was launched in 2002 and involved using retired military officers to implant Pentagon talking points in the media. The officers were presented as independent analysts on talk shows and news programs, although they had been specially briefed before their appearances by the Pentagon. In December of 2011, the DoD's own Inspector General released a report concluding that the program was in perfect compliance with government policies and regulations. Earlier this year, it was revealed that the U.S. government had contracted with H.B. Gary Federal to develop software that created fake social media accounts in order to steer public opinion and promote propaganda on popular websites. The federal contract for the software sourced back to the MacDill Air Force Base in Florida.
Friday night, it was a tribute to a soldier who Brian Williams credits with saving his life during the invasion of Iraq.
When the helicopter we were traveling in was forced down after being hit by an RPG. Our traveling NBC News team was rescued, surrounded, and kept alive by an armored mechanized platoon from the U.S. Army 3rd Infantry.
Very quickly, Williams' tale was disputed by soldiers themselves. Travis Tritton writes for the military newspaper Stars and Stripes.
We received a tip on a thread on Facebook. A lot of these guys had felt for years that NBC had been misrepresenting this story.
This is the aircraft that I was assigned to.
One of them was David Luke, a flight engineer who says he took part in the mission.
If somebody on the outside wants to embellish, what they did or didn't do, we know what really happened.
Attacks on Williams' credibility mounted. On Wednesday, he acknowledged an error.
I want to apologize. I said I was traveling in an aircraft that was hit by RPG fire. I was instead in a following aircraft.
America's Fox News has been showing streets ablaze, violent clashes and firebombs thrown at security officers. But with one major problem. The images are not from Russia. They're from Greece. Marina Portnay has been watching.
America has its fair share of protests and political dissent to be dealing with. Instead of keeping an eye on the ball, the country's mass media machine has turned to protests in Russia and dropped the ball on reporting the facts.
Thousands of protesters have gathered in Moscow, lashing out against Prime Minister Vladimir Putin and his ruling United Russia Party.
The only problem is that this video is not from Russia. Fox News Channel aired video of fires and chaos in Athens, convincing viewers that this mayhem is playing out in Moscow. The Fair and Balanced network paid no mind to the Greek lettering in the background. In case you're wondering, it says Greek National Bank.
Well, in eastern Russia, more than 3,000 people protested against proposed changes to the country's time zones.
The video shown by CNN is not of protesters, but rather of soccer fans rioting in Moscow over the killing of a fellow supporter.
The problem is that we showed the wrong pictures.
Only after the error was repeatedly noticed, CNN owned up to its mistake.
We do apologize for the error and are grateful to the many Russian viewers who have pointed it out to us.
Hey guys, Dabu7. What I have here is some amazing proof and evidence right in front of your face of deception by the mainstream media and by CNN especially. You have Nancy Grace and Ashley Banfield acting like they are far away from each other, and they are broadcasting to the satellite and it's coming back down. She's having to use her earpiece and all this. Check it out. I want you to pay attention to the red truck and the bus. Red truck, bus in the background. They've been busted red-handed, and they're trying to act like they're talking. I mean, it is so funny because they're trying to actually act like they're not sitting 30 feet away from each other.